The sharp silence of Mel's diner was broken when David slammed a thick contract onto the counter, daring Anna to make sense of what 3 lawyers had already failed to grasp. The place, right off a busy Chicago street, was filled with the smell of coffee and the soft hum of tired conversations. Anna, who had just wiped her hands on her stained apron, looked at David head-on. Her expression didn't flinch in the face of his obvious impatience, maybe even a bit of arrogance. It didn't matter to her that he wore a suit or looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Calmly, Anna opened the stack of paper and started, going through the contract with quick, practiced eyes. Everyone around seemed to pause, from the group of college kids frozen mid-bite to the jukebox in the corner that suddenly felt too quiet. As she flipped through the pages, Anna found sections that didn't add up. Her finger landed on one particular paragraph, then another, as she began pointing out gaps, loopholes that could leave someone liable for millions. Her voice was steady and clear, not loud, but making the details impossible to ignore. For the first time in years, David felt a wave of humility in the presence of someone who didn't need to push her weight around to prove she wasn't just another waitress. That evening, which David had expected to be nothing more than another way to run from his problems, was already steering in a direction that left him strangely hopeful and uneasy all at once. That night, David couldn't get any sleep, even though his apartment was on the 20th floor with giant windows showing off the Chicago skyline. The space seemed colder and emptier than ever. He tossed and turned, thinking about how Anna had taken apart his pride at Mel's diner. In just a few minutes, using words like a scalpel, she had forced him to face gaps he didn't even want to see. The city lights glittered across his ceiling, but for once they didn't feel comforting, only full of questions he could not quite put his finger on. Morning came fast, and the routine started all over again. David put on his suit, grabbed his polished leather briefcase, and caught the elevator down, joining the steady stream of other early risers in the lobby. At the office, he was surrounded by familiar faces in crisp suits, their conversations sharp, and their ambition showing in every sentence. But while everyone buzzed about quarterly numbers and upcoming deals, David's mind kept straying back to Mel's diner. He saw the scuffed counter and remembered Anna's steady hands flipping through those pages. He realized, maybe for the very first time, that it wasn't always the people in shiny offices who held the real power. Sometimes it was the ones who survived by reading between the lines, invisible to most, but impossible to ignore once you truly watched them. A few days later, David found himself back at Mel's diner, feeling oddly out of place among the clatter of dishes and the steady smell of bacon and fries. The morning rush was winding down, and regulars chatted over their coffee, but the space felt worlds away from the glass conference rooms he was used to. As he walked in, Anna looked up from where she was filling sugar containers. She spotted him right away. Her face showed no real surprise, and definitely no trace of hostility. If anything, there was a quiet calm in the way she held herself, the sort of calm that comes from having faced plenty of hard days and making it through each one. David made his way to the counter and managed a thank you, admitting that she had honestly saved him from a complete disaster with that contract. He tried to underline his gratitude, maybe hoping it would soften her or open a door, but Anna wasn't someone easily won over by flattery. When he suggested they talk, maybe grab a coffee somewhere a little less noisy, she paused and thought it over. Then, just as steadily as always, she told him he could wait until her shift was done. If he really wanted to talk, he would have to sit through the next couple of hours, listen, wait, and prove he was actually interested in hearing what she had to say on her terms. By 10 in the evening, Mel's diner had that empty, echoing quiet that settles in when most of the lights are off and only a couple of booths are still occupied. Anna finally slid onto the worn vinyl seat across from David, apron gone, looking tired but a little lighter. With the buzz of orders and clinking dishes gone, her words filled the space more than any noise could. She started to share her story, not needing much prompting. She talked about her plans for college, how everything changed when her mom got sick, and how suddenly the textbook pages didn't matter as much as making rent or keeping her little brother out of trouble. There were nights she spent studying, at the hospital cafeteria, and days she juggled double shifts after dropping out, so her family could get by. David listened quietly, really, hearing each part of her life. He realized this wasn't a conversation for pity or a chance to offer charity like he'd done so often before. Something about Anna's steady honesty made that impossible. Instead, he found himself asking her to join him, not as an employee, but as a partner. He offered resources, yes, but more importantly, full control to design and lead a legal literacy project on her own terms. In Anna, David saw not just a sharp mind, but a steady strength, the sort that forced him to look again at everything he thought he knew about what it meant to succeed. 3 days later, Anna pushed her way through the shining glass doors of Midwest, solutions clutching her battered old binder like it was a shield. The lobby was spotless and silent, with high ceilings and polished marble floors. She could feel eyes darting her way from behind front desks and down glossy hallways. Most people wore crisp shirts and carried tablets like they belonged here and knew exactly how things worked. Anna felt the old nerves creeping in, but she kept her head up and walked straight to the elevators. Inside the big conference room, David was already waiting at the table. He glanced up and gave her a quick, almost uncertain smile, so different from the confident man she had first met at the diner. It was clear he was ready to listen, not lead, and Anna appreciated that. She wasted no time in explaining what mattered. If they were building this legal literacy app, it had to be for everyone, not just people who already had the means to navigate the law. She talked about how the language needed to be simple, the features easy to reach, and the examples pulled straight from real life. She refused to let their work turn into another system that protected only the powerful. With each point, Anna let them know she saw the risks and wasn't afraid to push back. The meeting was suddenly interrupted when John, the company's vice president of legal affairs, strode in without knocking. John barely glanced at Anna before settling into the chair across from her. There was a hint of a sneer in his voice as he questioned what exactly she was doing there, dropping a pointed comment about her still smelling like fryer grease. The air in the room seemed to get colder. Anna didn't flinch, but David quickly spoke up. He made it completely clear that Anna was not a guest. She was the project lead, and her vision would guide how the app was built from now on. After John left, his heavy shoes echoing down the hallway, Anna let out a slow breath. She knew she would face more resistance like that. John was only the first of many who would doubt her or judge her, wanting her out before she ever got a chance to prove herself. But Anna didn't want shortcuts, and she had never cared about handouts. She turned to David and spoke honestly, asking him for only one thing: to have her back when things got tough. Earning respect mattered more to her than anything she could inherit. For Anna, every challenge was a chance to show what she was really worth. That night, Anna sat at the edge of her small apartment, hunched over her worn-out laptop at the cluttered kitchen table. The air smelled faintly of her mother's medicine, and from the next room came the low hum of her brother, Lucas, muttering math problems as he studied for a test. Anna tried to block out the worries and focus on the wireframe drawings and notes spread across the table. Her resources were limited, but she had never let that stop her before. With every click and sketch, she kept thinking about what she wanted the legal app to feel like for someone who had never set foot in a law office. Lucas wandered in with a notebook under his arm and glanced over her shoulder. He hesitated, then asked if she really thought the top executives, even with David's support, would let someone like her finish what she started. For a moment, Anna just stared at the blinking cursor on her screen. Then she looked up at him, clear and steady, and told him she was not waiting for permission from anyone. She was going to see this through, no matter what. Lucas watched her for a long second, and for the first time, he realized her courage was real, and that maybe things could really change. The following morning, Anna arrived early at Midwest Solutions, her mind running over every detail she had penciled out the night before. The conference room filled up fast, with sharp-suited team members spreading out laptops and shuffling paper. David took his usual spot, but stayed silent, just giving her an encouraging nod to begin. Anna stood at the front, voice steady, as she laid out her vision for the app. Clear language, real examples, free access for people who needed it most. As she spoke, some faces across the table started to tighten. John, never able to hide his doubts, jumped in with his old routine. He picked at the budget, argued about reducing sections, and even implied that streamlining would make things quicker. Anna saw right through it and met each suggestion head-on, not raising her voice but refusing to let any part of her plan get chipped away. This time, David stood with her without a moment's pause, backing up everything she insisted was essential. That little gesture from him meant more than any title or office. Walking out into the hallway, Anna felt a shift inside her. She was not just speaking up for others anymore. She was making something real, something that could last. And for the first time, she truly sensed she was shaping her own life, ready for whatever would come next. The first version of the app came together on a quiet Saturday, sunlight creeping across the kitchen floor as Anna sat at her table still, in pajamas. She was surrounded by coffee mugs and messy notes, clicking through each part and recording short audio guides for late-night users who might need them. Her voice in those recordings was steady and direct, making the legal talk sound simple enough for anyone to follow, which had been her goal from the very beginning. It was not perfect. The colors were a bit off, and a few links took users to the wrong spot. But it worked. That sense of new possibility was enough for Anna. She emailed the prototype link to David, hands trembling a little, unsure what kind of response would come back. David called almost right away, his voice a mix of shock and excitement, saying he had never seen anything like it, especially knowing Anna had built it with almost no budget at all. She listened, half smiling, but did not let herself get swept up in compliments. Instead, she made it clear she needed a seat at every technical meeting from now on, not just as a creator, but as someone whose ideas deserved room and respect. Inside the innovation lab at Midwest Solutions, Anna stood in front of a wall-mounted screen, a little nervous as she plugged in her old laptop and brought up the prototype for the developers. Most of the team had been doing this kind of work for years, and their crossed arms and skeptical glances made it clear they were not expecting much. She walked them through each section, showing how the app translated complicated legal terms into something anyone in Cleveland or any other American city could understand, and she explained why every scenario needed to feel real and honest. When Anna finished, there was an awkward moment of silence. Then someone in the back started clapping. The sound spread, growing louder and more genuine, until everyone in the room was on board. They threw out ideas for tweaks and upgrades, and Anna took careful notes, making sure nobody felt left out. Over the next several weeks, she was always there, helping in late-night coding sessions, organizing lunchtime brainstorms, or just listening to someone's new idea. The team started looking to her to settle debates or suggest directions whenever they got stuck. Pretty soon, the app was not just a project anymore. Thanks to Anna's ability to listen and lead, it started to feel like something that could really change things. The real test began when Midwest Solutions partnered with a network of public schools across Ohio, and Anna brought the app to high school classrooms where so many kids were used to being overlooked. Anna stood in front of a group of teens in Columbus, opening her laptop and projecting the app on a whiteboard. She spoke in plain English and used real stories to explain basic rights, tricky lease agreements, and the hidden details buried in everyday contracts. At first, the students slouched in their chairs, quiet and guarded, but as Anna rolled out example after example, situations that actually matched what they or their families had faced, the room started to wake up. For once, they were hearing someone who actually understood the hurdles they dealt with every day. At the end of her session, as everyone started to shuffle out, a boy hung back and approached her. He shared, almost in a whisper, about watching his mother lose their apartment because she had not understood the lease. Anna listened carefully, anger and sadness bubbling up at how common this story was. She promised him she would help however she could, feeling the weight of that promise. But alongside that sense of responsibility, Anna felt real pride. She knew she was helping change things in ways that actually mattered. Word started to spread. After the pilot program in the schools, more teachers reached out, hoping Anna could visit their classrooms, while Midwest Solutions used the early numbers to pitch the project to city leaders. But with all the new attention came resistance nobody had really warned her about. Meetings kept getting rescheduled at the last minute, and some files or data sets she needed suddenly could not be found. At first, Anna thought it was bad luck, but over the following weeks she began to see a pattern. Every setback traced back to John, who seemed uneasy with the idea of someone like her making such a big difference without following the usual rules. Anna started keeping notes of each roadblock, random emails making big decisions without her, access to team folders quietly restricted, and even whispered comments about how the project needed seasoned hands. When it became clear these were not accidents, she went straight to David, laying out everything she had noticed. David offered to step in, ready to pull rank and get people in line, but Anna shook her head. She wanted to handle this fight herself, asking only that David back her up if things got out of hand. She knew she needed to show real leadership, the kind that did not come from handouts, but from grit and determination. The next morning, Anna was the first to arrive at the innovation lab, balancing 2 boxes of donuts from a shop down the street, and her laptop loaded with something special. Little by little, the developers trickled in, surprised to see her already setting up. Instead of diving straight into the day's to-do list, Anna gathered everyone around and played a short video, faces of real people. Students, parents, and even an elderly woman from a Cleveland neighborhood filled the screen. They talked about how the app helped them understand their leases or keep from signing away their rights. The room got quiet, her team finally seeing their work as more than just bits of code. Just as the last testimonial finished, John tried to jump in and steer the conversation back to technical problems, hinting that time might be better spent elsewhere. Anna did not hesitate. She spoke up, making it clear that listening to users was just as important as any technical hurdle. There was a short, tense pause. But then David backed her up, reminding everyone that Midwest Solutions had always promised to put people first and try new things, even if it was risky. After that moment, the mood shifted. Her team seemed to rally behind her, even more determined to see the project succeed. Late one evening at her apartment, Anna was hunched over her kitchen table with a laptop, highlighter, and a printed copy of the newest merger contract between Midwest Solutions and Liberty Digital. Something in one of the clauses felt off to her, a line about post-merger responsibilities that just did not sit right. She poured another mug of coffee and started comparing it word by word against versions from previous weeks. After an hour, she spotted a tweak, Just a few words, easy to miss, which seemed to give Liberty Digital room to walk away from the whole deal without paying any penalty. The discovery left her uneasy. She understood how much was at stake. Anna barely slept. As soon as the sun was up, she sent David a message, then paced her small living room waiting for his response. When she explained the issue that morning in his office, David was stunned, flipping through the documents and shaking his head. He quickly called for an emergency meeting, pulling in the legal team and senior managers. Unlike before, nobody questioned Anna's place at the table or cut her off mid-sentence. That day, for the first time, everyone saw how much the company relied on her attention to detail and her ability to spot threats that others missed. As the emergency meeting settled in, David stood and made his voice clear for everyone to hear. He told the room that from now on, every legal decision at Midwest Solutions would go through Anna for review. There was a quiet buzz of surprise, then heads nodding as people realized she had just saved the company from a disaster. One of the board members, an older woman who usually spoke little, turned to Anna and asked how she could spot these tricky loopholes no one else seemed to catch. Anna did not hesitate. She explained that when you grow up always being told, there are no safety nets and that you only get one shot, you learn to pay attention to every single detail, especially the ones between the lines. Reading the fine print, she said, was never about the rules. It was about surviving in a world that barely offered you a place. On her way out of the meeting, John tried once more to rattle her, tossing out a sarcastic comment about her newfound authority. This time Anna just smiled, answering calmly that she did not need any fancy title. She would stick with the truth because that was all she ever needed to get results. That evening, as the last streaks of sunlight faded over downtown Columbus, David met Anna in the quiet glass-walled lab. The tables, usually scattered with laptops and sticky notes, stood empty except for one envelope he placed in front of her. David smiled, telling her this was long overdue, and handed her the document confirming her new role as Director of Legal Innovation. The position came with a full salary increase and full benefits, reflecting the weight of her responsibility. Anna took a deep breath, turning the paper over in her hands. She grinned, feeling a wave of gratitude, but also reminded herself that this step was only the beginning. There were so many barriers left to break down. They stood for a while, talking about what might come next. Around them the lab was quiet, but the energy in the air was different. For the first time, both knew they were not just updating an office directory. They were starting something bigger, a shift that could change the way justice worked for regular people. It struck Anna that justice was not supposed to be an exclusive club reserved for those who already had power. It should be a promise, available to anyone willing to reach for it. This official recognition felt important, but she also understood it was just the first chapter in a much larger, quietly unfolding revolution. Anna's rise did not go unnoticed. Within just a few days, her name started trending on social media. LinkedIn and Twitter were full of hot takes about Midwest Solutions' bold new hire. Newspapers in Columbus and across Ohio ran stories with her photo, some hailing her as a symbol of fresh air in the legal tech world, someone who had finally broken through old barriers. But the celebration was not universal. Pretty soon, a group of noisy critics began questioning whether someone without a law degree should be calling any shots, let alone leading innovation on legal projects. That tension kept building, especially after a major group of investors reached out to the company for more information. At the next board meeting, everyone's faces looked tense, and there was barely any small talk. Representatives from the main investment firm wanted candid answers. What exactly were Anna's credentials, and could they justify her appointment with anything but headlines? Anna took a breath, stood up, and explained that what made her truly Valuable was that she did not come from the same old professional circle. She said she was living proof that real results could come from reaching outside the usual lines people drew. Let the work speak for itself, she told them. That's what matters most. After the board meeting, as the crowd filtered out, David caught up with Anna in the hallway. He could see the strain in her face, the kind that comes from having to defend yourself just for being different. David reassured her, saying he knew exactly why some people were so nervous about her leadership. She was bringing in the very change that so many had talked about, but deep down, most were afraid to actually face. That made her not just valuable, but necessary. He told her not to mistake their resistance for failure. It was proof she was shaking things up in all the right ways. Later that evening, Anna stayed late in the lab, her mind busy with thoughts of what needed to come next. She walked over to the whiteboard and in all caps wrote her promise to herself, "Launch on time." The words felt like the spark she needed, a reminder that every challenge was just another reason to keep pushing. As the launch day drew closer, the communications team handed her a draft for the speech, all polished sentences and safe phrasing. Anna looked it over briefly, then thanked them and set it aside. That night, she sat at a spare desk and drafted her own speech, deciding to address people honestly. If this was her moment, she wanted to lead by telling the truth. When the big day arrived, the company's main auditorium was packed. Everyone from interns to senior partners squeezed into seats, with a few standing along the back wall. Anna walked onto the stage, feeling all eyes on her. Unlike speakers before her, she tossed aside the script and just spoke from the heart. She talked plainly about her own path, explaining how every setback and obstacle had forced her to see things others ignored. She explained that the new app they were launching was not meant to be a personal achievement or a prize for a chosen view. Instead, she described it as a flashlight, designed to help anyone searching for answers in places that had always seemed out of reach. There was a soft hush as her words landed, but by the end her honesty warmed the whole room, and a wave of genuine applause followed. In that moment, Anna realized that justice could actually belong to everyone, not just those lucky enough to be born into it. Later that night, she began getting notifications. Her speech was going viral. People on social media echoed her courage and clarity. The next morning, she found invitations from the board to join follow-up discussions. When they suggested bringing in a co-leader from outside, Anna respectfully stood her ground. She insisted that only someone who truly understood exclusion from the inside could steer a change that honest. A few months passed, and Anna's life changed in ways she could not have predicted. One evening, she found herself standing in front of a packed gymnasium at a community center in Cleveland. The room buzzed with energy, filled with teenagers, parents, and neighbors from various backgrounds, all people who now use the app across 27 states. Anna listened to story after story from folks who shared how the technology had helped them solve problems that used to seem out of reach. People told her about winning back child custody, getting fair treatment at work, or simply understanding their rights for the first time. Each story felt like proof that something once believed impossible had quietly become part of everyday life. Not long after that night, Anna received a large envelope in the mail. She opened it and found an official letter from Ohio State University, saying she was readmitted, tuition fully covered. Tucked inside was news that they were naming a new scholarship in her honor, one that would help others like her get the education they deserved. Later that week, Anna sat at the top of the steps outside the Columbus Museum with David. They clinked their coffee mugs in a toast, celebrating all those who had spent years unnoticed and now were finally seen. Anna felt certain that from here on out, no one would be ignored again.